don't care. I actually personally don't care what people want to believe. This country was founded on religious freedoms. That's how that happened, okay? And what enabled the religious freedoms is that our Constitution makes no mention of God at all, which means nobody's God reigns supreme over anybody else's. And therein is the religious freedom that attracted all these waves of immigrants for centuries. And so, I don't have an issue with what you do in the church. But I'm going to be up in your face if you're going to knock on my science classroom and tell me that I got to teach what you're teaching in your Sunday school, because that's when we're going to fight. And I'm going to tell you something. There's no tradition of scientists knocking down the Sunday school door, telling the preacher, that might not necessarily be true. That's never happened. There are no scientists picketing out front of churches. There's been this coexistence forever. So to have the religious communities knocking down the science door, there's something wrong there. And I think back to Al-Ghazali and the 12th century and the fall of that intellectual empire. And it's got me scared in America. I wrote, do you remember that case in Jersey where this middle school kid, forgive me, I forgot his name, I met him, Matthew LeClaire, do you remember this? In his history class, the teacher was saying that Jesus is the only one in true saving, Christianity is the only one in true religion, and if you were not, you were damned to hell. And he pointed to a Muslim girl and said she's damned to hell already, it's too late for her, and that Noah's Ark carried dinosaurs on it, and that the Big Bang and evolution are not scientific. He recorded this and submitted it to the New York Times. It became a whole expose on this teacher. And then what happened? The ACLU came out, and separation of church and state, and it's a violation of the separation of church and state. And I said, I don't normally get in those arguments, because I got the universe to worry about. I let that go. But then I thought, no, people are missing something here. It's not a case of a separation of church and state. It's not. It's not. Okay? I looked at the comments and the transcript. I ignored the part about Jesus being your Savior. I ignored the part about Christianity being the one and true religion. I paid attention to the statement that Noah's Ark carried dinosaurs, okay? And so, I wrote a letter to the editor of the New York Times that they printed, and I will read to you. To the editor, people cited violation of the First Amendment when a New Jersey school teacher asserted that evolution and the Big Bang are not scientific, and that Noah's Ark carried dinosaurs. The case is not about the need to separate church and state. It's about the need to separate ignorant, scientifically illiterate people from the ranks of teachers. Let's fix this one once and for all, okay? Let's just fix this, okay? Once and for all. Yes, Einstein and God were like that, okay? It's like God doesn't play dice with the universe. It turns out God does. That's what quantum mechanics is all about. He was wrong about that, okay? He mentions God a lot. And so all the religious people like claiming him because he's famous and he's unimpeachably smart. And if you get famous, smart scientists in your camp, that boosts your camp, okay? But let's straighten this out once and for all. Here's a letter from Albert Einstein. In his later years, 1954, a couple of years before he died. It was, of course, a lie, what you read about my religious convictions. A lie which is being systematically repeated. I do not believe in a personal God, and I've never denied this, and have expressed it clearly. If something is in me which can be called religious, then it's the unbounded admiration for the structure of the world so far as our science can reveal it. Case closed. So anyone says Einstein was religious, just show them this letter, okay?
Do you believe in God?
Me?
Creator?
Yeah, so the more I look at the universe, just the less convinced I am that there is something benevolent going on. So if your concept of a creator is someone who's all-powerful and all good, that's not an uncommon pairing of powers that you might ascribe to a creator. All-powerful and all good. And I look at disasters that afflict Earth and life on Earth. Volcanoes, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, disease, pestilence, congenital birth defects. You look at this list of ways that life is made miserable on Earth by natural causes. And I just ask, how do you deal with that? So philosophers rose up and said, if there is a God, God is either not all-powerful or not all good. I have no problems if, as we probe the origins of things, we bump up into the bearded man. If that shows up, we're good to go. Okay? Not a problem. There's just no evidence of it. And this is why religions are called faiths, collectively. Because you believe something in the absence of evidence. That's what it is. That's why it's called faith. Otherwise, we would call all religions evidence. But we don't, for exactly that reason. So I'm given what everyone describes to be the properties that would be expressed by an all-powerful being in the gods that they worship. I look for that in the universe and I don't find it. So I remain unconvinced. But if you've got some good evidence, bring it, bring it, bring it, okay? And so I don't lead with that information because what I believe should be irrelevant to anyone. It's not about me. It's about the real world.
Question about the fossil record. When people, non-believers, try to attack the dating system they use for fossils and whatnot, carbon dating and whatnot, is there any validity to that argument?
So these are when you say non-believers, people who like to reject science in favor of their religious philosophies. Right.
Yes.
So these are people who are apparently require data to support their faith. I find that odd, right? Because then it's not faith, right? I mean, if you have religious faith, then whatever anyone says about the world wouldn't matter to you. If it does matter to you, then that's a different kind of contract that you're taking out on information. And that contract is, there could be data out there that would conflict with your religious philosophy, and then you'd have to go along with it. But that's not what actually happens. There's a pretense that data matters, and then they filter it, reinterpret it, ignore parts of it, slice and dice it so that it all fits in to the religious philosophy. So it requires blinders in order to make that happen. So with the radioactive dating, which we use with many different elements, carbon is good, carbon-14, we've all heard about that, is good for periods of time that go back thousands, tens of thousands of years, basically into the Ice Age. We can carbon date, frozen cavemen and mastodons coming out of glaciers. Then we have other elements used that are radioactive and they decay. Lead is used to date the age of the Earth. That has a half-life of billions, I forgot the exact, billion plus years. Whereas carbon-14 is in the thousands of years. So you pick the one that suits the time interval you're interested in, and then you can date those. That's how we date meteorites, for example. Yeah. The people who are in denial of this, simply, it exhibits a failure in their educational system.
In the history of human civilization, do I believe in the God that you believe in?
Yes.
Okay, that's probably what I was guessing. Is that the Christian God? Catholic, that'd be Christian. Yeah. Okay, so every time I hear someone say that God, I ask people, what is God to you? They say God is good and God is all powerful. And okay. So then, you know what happened? This happened in the 1700s. The city of Lisbon, Portugal. 1755, I think was the year. I'm off by like 3 years. Lisbon, Portugal, one of the holiest cities in all of Europe. A Catholic city. All Saints' Day, one of the holier days in the Christian calendar, back then especially. Everyone was in church, worshiping. That morning, there was an earthquake. And that earthquake, what buildings are most susceptible to earthquakes? The tallest, biggest buildings, and this is 1755, one of the tallest, biggest buildings in Lisbon, the churches. So, that morning, 80,000 people died in their churches from the collapse of the domes, walls, and what followed the earthquake.
Are you the one?
Guess what? A tsunami followed the earthquake, basically wiping the city of Lisbon clean. That was the beginning of what we today think of as the modern atheism Because at the time, people said, if God is all loving, how could he have possibly done this? God presumably controlling the forces of nature. We're not talking about man's inhumanity to man here, which would be the consequence of free will. We're talking about nature. And so people at the time, led by people such as Voltaire, asked the question, if there is a God, and we had this tsunami that killed 80,000 people and wiped out a holy city on a holy day, collapsing churches onto people's heads, then either God is not all powerful or God is not all good. If we define good by being interested in your health and longevity, that's a fair definition of being good, I would think. And so that created an entire philosophical rift in the theological community, and people parted ways at that time. So when I look at the universe and I see asteroids coming down to strike and rendering species extinct, I see forces of nature that would just as soon have us dead or extinct. I don't see the goodness in the world that people speak of. And am I being selective? I don't think so. A tsunami hit Indonesia, 250,000 people died. An earthquake hit Haiti, 250,000 people died. This is nature killing us. I've joked about it. I said, if another earthquake comes, we should get the hint that Earth is trying to shake us off. You ever see a dog like shake after it's wet? It's like, Earth, say, get off. Humans. So when people define God in that way, I don't see the all good part. I see some good, I see a lot of bad. Nature trying to interrupt my health and my longevity. So now, that being said, nearly half of all scientists are religious. They pray to a God. Half of all Western in America. So being a scientist does not make you not believe in God. Nearly half. Here's the difference. The scientists who are productive, who are also religious, do not use the Bible as their science reference. The Bible, they removed all, and they use the Bible as a source of their spiritual fulfillment and enlightenment. And they draw a line in the sand. And Galileo said this first. Galileo, a religious Catholic man in Italy. He said it first. He's reading the Bible, and he's got it, but then he invents a telescope. He builds a telescope, best one ever. And he's looking at the universe and says, this doesn't match up. And so he comes up with the phrase, a brilliant phrase, in a letter to a friend of his. He said, apparently, the Bible tells you how to go to heaven, not how the heavens go.
Đúng chưa? Thầy có thể mô tả tiếp theo, đó là điểm F và N đang ở vị trí cân bằng đi lên biên dương. Biên dương, đúng không? Đây là hai điểm gần nhau nhất, có cùng trạng thái chuyển động. Rồi tiếp tục chúng ta coi cái điểm nào nữa đây. Điểm Q này không được nha các bạn. Tại điểm Q này mặc dù nó ở vị trí cân bằng nhưng mà nó đang ở đi xuống biên âm nha. Đúng không ạ? Rồi chúng ta có một cái hai điểm nữa là điểm G và điểm B. Chúng tiếp tục là điểm G và điểm B. Đang ở vị trí biên dương nhưng đi về vị trí cân bằng. Đang ở biên dương rồi đi về vị trí cân bằng. Đúng không ạ? Như vậy câu C các bạn trả lời 3 ý. Đây là ý thứ nhất, đây là ý thứ hai, đây là ý thứ ba. Được chưa? Đó là nội dung câu số 2 của chúng ta. Tiếp tục chúng ta sẽ qua cái bài số 3. Xem nội dung cái bài số 3 xem coi nó như thế nào đây. Quan sát hình 1.2 so sánh biên độ và ly độ của hai dao động 1 và 2 tại mỗi thời điểm là bao nhiêu? Đây. Bài này chúng ta có hai cái dao động. Dao động 1 tương ứng với cái màu xanh. Dao động 2 thì tương ứng với cái màu đỏ. Và người ta nói so sánh biên độ và ly độ của hai dao động tại mỗi thời điểm khác nhau. Thì bây giờ các bạn coi nè. Biên độ của dao động 1 là độ lệch cực đại như vậy từ đây đến đây, cũng như từ đây đến đây. Được chưa?